So, happy to be here again. I was in Novosibirsk 1 year ago having a lecture at the university, and this is about the same topic but a little bit different. So, this is about how to create a successful open source project, both from leading the project, also to how to make enough money to be able to pull it through. So a little bit about my background. I started a long time with programming. We couldn't afford a computer, so I put some asphalts on the streets. And I also started by writing a clone of different games, because back in 79, when I bought the computers, you just got the computers, no programs. So you had to create everything yourself. And I also started an open source database that I'm pretty sure everybody who has ever used internet have used. So a little bit about my family. When I started with MySQL and making it open source, because I wanted to give something back to the community. I used open source since around '83, and MySQL was the first project that we thought was good enough that we could both make open source, also earn enough money so we could continue developing it. And another reason also that I thought that if it's successful, it will allow me to go to interesting places in the world. So here is me, my oldest daughter, who gave the name to the MySQL project in Madagascar, chatting with some people who had never seen a small blonde girl before. I also combined this by working from home. I've been lucky, been working from home since '79, when I was 16, and it's kind of nice to create a company where most of the people are working from home. So the first 6 years in MySQL, we had no offices. We just hired people all over the world working from home. And this is me again with 2 dogs at the time. I also have a son, Max, and he gave the name to the MaxDB product, and also we have now working on a max scale product in the MariaDB Corporation. But when you create a company and want to be successful, you have to take in investors, and you get some growing pains with the growth. Those who knows the MySQL history knows that we come into some strange company, especially when InnoDB was taken over by Oracle, and some of us also got a little bit scared that what will happen when Sun was bought by Oracle. But fortunately, there was somebody who could take over. That's why I'm working on the MariaDB project, and here we have me with my youngest daughter, Maria. So, the first part of the talk is how to create a project, and the other part is how to make money on it so that you actually can afford to do it. I will assume that you can read English. I will not go through all the points of these slides. These slides, most of these are bullets and things that you can look on and afterwards the talk, and just see that if you want to do a project, you have all the information that you need in the slides. And there's lots of reasons why open source is a better way to develop. One of the biggest reasons for making MySQL open source was, one, to give something back, but also because I believe then, and I believe even more now, that open source is the best possible development or way to develop open source, or any software actually. And one of the things people say against open source is that, was even in the panel yesterday, that if you start to use open source in your company, you suddenly have to manage open source, and you have to hire people who can know Linux, MySQL, MariaDB, and so on. That's not true. You actually get better support by companies in the open source groups that you can get from commercial entities. That's what we're doing with MariaDB, with what we did with MySQL, and I see that also with other projects. The nice thing with open source is that not that the code is available, but the effect of that is that you can get support from many companies, either from the original developers or from anybody else. So you're not tied to one company. And this is the vendor lock-in, which is kind of crucial for any company. So Linus Torvalds is known to say that with enough people looking at the code, every bug will be found. Unfortunately, that's not really true, because nobody will go and look at code that works, or most of the people are not developers. But the truth is more that if you have enough big user base, sooner or later all code paths will be tested, and you will get the bug reports and you will get them fixed, either by yourself or by others. Some people believe that open source solves all problems. It does solve most of the problems in the development parts, but it doesn't solve the problem of how can I earn enough money to hire enough developers to drive an open source project. And Bruno Lavorge, he has a nice blog that explains how he had to change from Apache to AGPL just to be able to survive. So the problem with open source is it's very hard to get money to pay for the developers, because if you're doing support and that's the only way you get money, that means that for being able to hire one developer, you need to have 10 support people. And the money will be just enough to pay for the developers. I mean, you have 10–20% usually profit on a support person. So that means that you need to have, if you want 10 developers, which you need for a big project, you need 100 support people. It doesn't work. But as I said, open source is a better way to develop software, and we will go through the details how to make money on open source. So the top reasons for creating an open source project, either you have something, code that you use to solve your own problems. That was the thing with MySQL and also with PHP, and in some sense also with Linux. There's also companies who are relicenses their closed source projects as a desperate move to be able to compete with the big guys. Netscape tried that. And also get more developers and find more people for the project. There are also some people who also want to give back for everything that the community has done for you. But I think it's most interesting projects are those who really want to compete with the big closed source companies and do something to change the world. I go to a lot of conferences. I also talk with different politicians, and people ask me, so what is it that makes open source tick? Why are people doing open source? Because politicians especially, they can't understand why would somebody just help somebody for free. And then in this case you need to talk with the same voice as the politicians, and I explain them that open source is human nature, because humans they are cheap, they are lazy, and they are selfish. And what has that to do with open source? No, you use open source initially because it's free. And when you want to develop open source, you usually do that because you have your own need. You notice that this product is almost good enough, but there's some feature that you need to fix. So you fix it and you give it back to the community because it's really a hard problem of keeping a fork up to date. So, and when you tell this to politicians, they say, oh, I understand things. There are also people who are doing that just to help people. But actually, if you look at all changes done in open source, that's a minority. Look at all the changes in Linux. They are driven by companies who are using Linux for themselves. They're doing it for selfish reasons. So, how many here is working on an open source project? One, maybe. So how many understands English? Okay, good. Just checking. So one thing is when you start, first see, can you contribute to an existing one? And this is something that Sun did wrong. Sun was a great company. I was happy to be there for 1 year. And they did lots of things good for open source. But they never understood how open source works. So what they did was that they went to the community, saw some interesting project, then the technicians thought, we can do this so much better. So they did something similar, but in their opinion better, and then they released it, and they were then kind of astonished by that nobody wanted to use their project, or it never got as successful as the original projects. It's much easier to go in and help and use the community that already exists, or restart the project than just doing something again. And remember, with open source, code is not the thing that will win the battle, it's the community. I spent a lot of time creating a community with MySQL, and the reason MySQL was successful was that we were very, very friendly with the community. We actively helped everyone who had a problem. So during the first 5 years, I wrote personally 30,000 emails just helping people starting. And that was the thing that created MySQL. So you need to interact with the community, make it very easy for them to be part of it. You also need a good team. And what I personally believe is that when people come in and wants to get a patch into your project, you need to answer quickly. You need to treat people the way you would like to be treated in their shoes. So saying that your code is ugly or that you don't have a clue of what you're doing, like some projects do, that's not acceptable if you want to have a friendly community. You need to help. You need actually to teach people to program. So I do that both for people who are given patches, but especially for people we hire. The first 2 years we spend getting them to become better programmers. And you need to create an active and passionate user group. And that takes a lot of time. It's not something that you just do by releasing the code. And that this is something that most companies misses. That they just believe, code is out there, the community will help us. You need to be active with them. I believe that one of the most important things is transparency, because people are not who are going to help you. They're not doing that just to help you. They're doing that to help themselves, but they believe in you and that you will exist and what will happen if you're totally transparent with what you're doing. And this is also true if you're doing open core instead of full open source, that people need to know what to expect. If you have closed source features, they want to know that not any of your existing features someday will be turned into closed source features, like with what Oracle did with MySQL and the thread pool. Suddenly just removed it and added that to MySQL Enterprise. You don't do that. So you need to be transparent with everything you're doing. And you need to communicate. You need to be on conferences like this. So since I started the MariaDB project, I've been on more than 100 different conferences talking both about MariaDB and about open source, because I am very passionate about open source and I would like to see even more things become open source. because that's better for you and better for me. And one of the things that people don't understand that also was self-evident from the first talk we had, the first keynote, is that when you release something as open source, it will take a long time before people come and give you code. And the reason is that first people want to start using your product, testing it, putting it in production, and at some point they will notice that there's something missing. And then they have two choices, move to another product or fix it. And when they fix it, then they will give it back. But that takes a long time. And you need to be good open source citizens. It's kind of hard to say what that means, but basically treat people like you would be treated, and help others. And just don't expect that people will take support and pay for support just in the beginning. Especially easy things, they should be able to fix themselves. Or you should help them with the forums. So with MariaDB, we don't have a forum, we have a knowledge base, and we ensure that any question posed to the knowledge base is answered. And if you look at most projects, and even commercial entities, you go to a forum and you see maybe 5 or 7 topics, each have 10,000 questions, all unanswered. That's not something that will work. And if you want to be, you need to be better if you're open source, because that's how you get people using you. So, early release often. That actually means also that you should release alphas, you should release your plans. You shouldn't, as some people suggested yesterday, start doing something in the hidden and then release it and hope to make a big splash, because the only reason for doing that is that you have a marketing organization telling you that we need to make big news. But that's not how you develop code, because you have no clue is the features that you're developing is this actually features that people want to have. By having the planning open, you get input early, and you want to have that. Many companies believe that the cost of using open source is zero, because now we go from Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle and go to MariaDB or Postgres or whatever, you don't have to pay anymore. The problem is that if everybody would think so, the poor open source developers will never get paid. And the product would stop working because they're not maintenance, they're not moved to new generation of hardware, or the features that you will need will never happen. With MySQL, we had lots of people in the early days said, we really want to have subqueries, and we are not using MySQL because you don't have subqueries. And we told them that with 50,000 euros, we could get this done. And they said that, oh no, we don't have the money because we are paying Oracle millions, and all our money is going there. And the sad thing is that this is true for many open source projects. If you put one license fee of the money and give it that to developers, you will usually get the features that you need. Oh, 10 minutes, okay. Sad thing is that in 2007 I was in lots of conferences and people saying that open source is winning. We own the servers, the desktop is next. Everything will be open source. The sad thing is that thanks to the phones, most of the new software developed is closed source. And the simple reason is that with open source you can't get enough money to do the apps. And something needs to be done to change that. So I will jump over some of these slides just to be able to go to the money part because we have 10 minutes left. So the slides will be available. So, well, I just want to point out the hacking business model. This was something me and Zach Grant created some 7 years ago, how to create a company where everybody is treated as equal. And these are rules that will help you do that. When I recreated Monty Program AB when I left Sun, we were using exactly those rules with the Monty Program AB. And that allowed me to hire almost all the critical MySQL people to work on MariaDB. So, looking at open source, you have two options, doing a service company or doing a software company or product company. Software, a support service company is something where you only give support and in some way. But the problem is that if you go to investors or when you want either to get more money or if you want to sell the company, if you make 1 million rubles, not much, but still, your company will be worth 2 million rubles if you just do support. But if you actually have something where customers is forced to pay, you will be worth 10 million rubles. And with MySQL, we made some 70 million euros when we were sold, and we were valued to $1 billion, and the rest comes from these some 10 million users we had, and then that's why we were worth 1 billion. But without having licenses, we would have only been worth 100 millions. So these are, then we go into them. Financial slides, and if you work in a company and you have some product that you would like to see as open source, these are the slides that you should show your CEO or CTO of why you get a big benefit of changing to open source. And for users, the biggest benefit is no login. And you can easily see that for looking at BlackBerry, WhatsApp did a couple of weeks ago announce that they will not support the old BlackBerry phones. If WhatsApp would be open source, or the source code would be available, BlackBerry could fix it. No, they can't do anything with all the phones. And that's a reason to use open source. So for developers, everybody who's doing development, it's much easier to fix things in open source because everything is available. Let's skip this one. So the question is when to go open source. And if you're a service company, there's no problem. You will be able to create a nice, profitable company doing support on open source and grow to 10 people, no problem. But if you really want to go and compete with closed source companies, you need something else. You need to first choose the right license. These are basically the 5 licenses you need to know about. Public domain, BSD, LGPL, GPL. And here you have basically the business models that exist that you can work on with open source. You can be open core. I will go through as long time allows into details for all of those. So you don't have to see that one. So open core means that you have some part of your product is open source, and then you have commercial features that you have to pay for that are closed source. The problem with open core is that companies who are using it, they are trying to say this is an open source business model. It isn't, because as soon as something is closed source, that means that you can't change anything anymore in that version. So all the benefits that you have with open source, you can fix things, you have different vendors who can give you support, everything disappears. So in practice, open core is closed source if you need any of the new features. It doesn't mean it's a good business model. It can help you, but it's not an open source business model. Some people have tried to do crowdfunding with open source. The problem is that you get some initial money for releasing the first version, but doing new versions every month or every year that you need to do for a successful project, that will not work. And MariaDB have from the community, during 5 years we got 5,000 euros, and we don't really pay many developers on that. Dual licensing, that works perfectly for infrastructure projects. In other words, something like MySQL that you embed with others. So it works by, if you use GPL, that with GPL, a program like Adobe, they wanted to include MySQL as part of the offering. So they combined MySQL and Adobe and sent that to customers, but for to be able to do that, they had to get the same code under another license, and they paid us for that, because they couldn't use GPL. So we got more than half of our money from companies paying us for using MySQL. And that allowed us to give, or let everybody else use it for free. So business source is that what I recommend people who are doing end users projects, like let's say MP3 player or something like that. Or actually, this would work for any apps on the phone. So the idea with the business source is that this is not an open source license. I have 1 minute, I will try to speak fast because this is the important slide. Is that the idea is that all code is available, like with open source. You can fix anything, anybody can help you, there's no vendor lock-in. But the license will say that if you use it in production in this way, then you have to pay. And the idea is that you have a product, you can say that everybody can use it for free with companies like LinkedIn or Facebook or Google, who has a lot of money. If they use this in production, they have to pay. So, and why is the relation this has with open source is that the license also say that at this date, this code will be open source. So it's kind of delayed. But this works for any app, and this is much better than open core because you will get as much money on this as you can get on open core. But all the problems that you have with open core doesn't exist. There's no vendor lock-in, you can fix any bugs. You're free to do everything that you can do with open source, except some people have to pay. And recommendations that I usually say that after 3 or 5 years, it should become open source, and you should target to get 100 or 100,000 to pay. And they are companies who already are using this with good results. There's lots of links and background to this. I've even written an academic paper on how to do this. And one of the questions that I usually get is that, so this is both true with dual licensing and with business sources, that what happens if people cheat? Thing is that people always cheat, even if it's closed source or something else. But the main thing is that companies who are running things in production and they are big, like Spotify, they could never use a license or software they didn't pay a license for if they have to. Because if they ever, somebody will eventually find out, and when they find out, the consequences will be so disastrous they can't afford it. So let people cheat. The real people that matters will pay. And I can leave this one while we're taking questions.
Вопросы? Где?
And the slides will be available at the conference page, I assume.
Yeah.
So you can use this as a reference for the future. I hope I didn't get everybody to sleep.
Thank you for the report. Sorry for my English.
it's not perfect, but I can do questions. One question I didn't understand when you started to make money with your open source project. And
within 2 months with MySQL.
Since start development?
No, we start of release.
Oh, okay. And
with MariaDB, we had a problem. We hired 20 people. Initially, we need to do a fork. We need to create a community. So it took me 4 years until I started to make money.
Okay.
So I had to spend 4 million euros for doing that. But that was what I wanted to give back to the community and also to ensure that the projects MariaDB will survive.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, you just skipped some slides, and where can I?
They will be on the conference page.
Okay, thank you.
and these slides are meant as a checklist. If you ever want to make money on open source or create a project, this should be all the information that you critically need, and you should see this as checkpoints that you need to do every single one to be successful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Happy to.
Добрый день, спасибо за доклад, надеюсь, меня переведут. Значит, вопрос следующий. Вот вы начинаете с клевой идеи, у вас есть клевый проект, и... Там не синхронный перевод?
Не знаю. Нет, не синхронный.
Кто переводит?
Ну, я. So, our friend assumes he has a great idea.
Вопрос в следующем. Как мотивировать разработчиков вкладывать свое время, да, когда нету денег, нечем платить, да, чтобы продукт дошел до какого-то момента, когда он действительно может себя окупать хотя бы?
Yeah, just so you know,
he likes his idea, and he's wondering what are the best practices for motivating other developers to get to like his idea, so they contribute their time and work before there is money.
But in this case, you just need to create a company and first publish your idea somewhere, usually write blogs, get other people interested, and then create a company, and you can look at the hacking business model for doing that, and then get people to invest enough time to make a prototype, and then go out and try to get either funding or customers. What I did with my original project, MySQL was created, or the base of MySQL was created in 1981. And I went to companies, actually worked at a company, they had a problem, I created a project for solving their problem, and then I went to other customers and sold it, and they paid for the development of it. So finding a customer who really likes your idea and pays you for that, but you keep the rights to the code. That's the way to go.
Ну, как тогда популярность своей идеи доставить, чтобы она дошла для людей, которые согласны были бы со мной вот просто взять и начать разрабатывать этот проект, вкладывать свои силы?
So, the question is how to... Что? Okay. He's insisting on the formulation like how to attract developers to your idea. How to, tell the world about your idea so other developers from the community are joining the project and starting the development. And one of the goals is to attract as many developers as possible. How to motivate them.
Without, the thing is that you need to find people who have a need. You don't just find developers who will come and help you. You need to find people who have a need for your idea and are going to invest time because they need their end result.
So how would you do that?
I would go to a customer or somebody who would need your idea and tell that we can do this. Help us. Help us help you. That's what I would do. And that's what I did.
Пообщаемся в кулуарах, да.
Because when you had the funding, it's easy to take these developers. Because I have noticed during my experience with MySQL that somehow developers want to get paid, because otherwise their wife will be furious.
Hello, I'm Ilya from Burning Buttons. I have a question. So, if someone gets your code, so he finds out the sources of your project,
Yep.
can he just make something like change it a little bit and steal your idea completely? And
If you use business source, he can do that, but he would have to pay licenses to you for 5 years. With GPL, he would be bound by the GPL, and his code needs to be GPL. And if he wants to get out of GPL because of some customers, he needs to come to you. With open source, people can always steal your ideas. But the fact is that if you have a large project, nobody will go and take a piece out of there. It's just too complex. And if they do, then you have to have a license that you can ensure that you can get something back. If you're doing a product company. If you do a support company, you don't care, because the more spread your product is, the more customers you will have to give support to.
but if can he just steal the code and not open the changes, not open the code itself, so no one would think about if this is a stolen code or this is a self-made?
If it's Apache BSD, you're not stealing, you're allowed to do that. With GPL, you're also allowed to do that, as long as you don't distribute the code. So stealing only comes in effect if you are taking your closed source project, you're taking GPL code, add that to your project, and then send it to the customers. Then you're stealing, if you're not open sourcing. And in this case, some people will do that. But we also had in MySQL, this is true story, a company who wanted to make public their lawyers go and check all the documents and the code and notice, hey, you are including MySQL and you are shipping. You have a problem. So we got a call, some of our salespeople. Actually, I think the person came in person and said that to a salesperson. We have been bad boys. We have used your code with the license. How much do we have to pay? And that's a nice position to be in.
All right, thank you.
The thing is that you have people who are dishonest and honest. I believe that there are enough honest people around.
Okay.
And especially big companies who makes a lot of money, they can't afford to be completely dishonest.
Matti, thanks so much for your speech. I have several questions. The first one is, how does forking of your project by open source community help for your project? Not.
You mean I did fork MariaDB from MySQL.
Yep.
And the reason I did that was that I couldn't contribute to MySQL. Oracle closed all that. They closed all ties to the community.
No.
Yeah.
For example, if even I fork the MariaDB and make my own database with Blackjack and some.
You are allowed to do that, yes.
Okay. How does it? Does it help for MariaDB or it does help for only my purposes?
It depends that if you also give code back because there are some pieces that are hard to maintain, then it of course will help me. But if you are just keeping things closed in house, I don't even know about it, nobody knows about it, then it only helps you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So for example, Amazon has forked MySQL and created the Aurora storage engine on top of MySQL. They're not distributing it, they don't have to show the code. They are benefiting it. All users of MySQL on running Amazon's benefits of it. But my Oracle doesn't benefit of it, we don't benefit of it.